A mic check in the room. Can anybody hear me?
No?
Oh, I'm waiting for it.
I got it went to my junk folder, but I got it.
Okay,
this
well,
morning.
I'm
Yeah,
looking at
so
my junk.
actually, I told someone that too. I was like, oh yeah, you did the fork in the road. It sounds like it's a bad incident.
Yeah, well, that's the one that Twitter.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, I
Stand
thought it
by.
was
We
a
will
joke.
start
So I was like,
in
"Hey,
about 3
I was
minutes.
like, what? And it's like hit the
Thank
news last
you.
night. And I was like, whoa.
I got it at like 9 o'clock last night.
Yeah, I got it at 4 in the morning or something.
Yeah. Okay. That's okay. Maybe it was that. Yeah.
What do you normally do here? I haven't read iPads in a while. Do you normally? Yeah.
Metro's running good, right?
Say you had like, say you had a. I mean, you could spoof all three.
Yeah. Yep. Ooh, that's a good conspiracy theory.
There's early morning flights. They have a stack.
Throw that in the comments.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I understand that. I'm gonna take Metro all the way back over to my cousin's in order to be able to shower and stuff, like, and then go over. Okay. But in order to be able to get bags and everything else, it's gonna take a while anyway.
Yeah.
So.
See, I don't have that. That's why I'm just.
Got it.
Mic drop.
I'm retirement eligible.
Well, I was wondering, it's if you're retirement eligible, you're going to retire anyway. It's a good deal. Like, oh, you're going to pay me for 9 months to do nothing? I don't
Well, but
understand.
it's not true. If you look at the email, it basically says you don't have to return. You're exempt from returning to the office. Your command may choose to unload. Like you're not going to get. So you can't go off and get another job.
You can't?
I don't think so.
So they just want you to go on vacation.
Right. And you're not going to have a performance review. So it's basically a freaking slacker if you want to.
So,
That's how it is. When you
well, maybe
leave-
I'll just do it anyway. Do my own fork in the road.
Sorry, we should be doing this up here on stage. Hey, is there a button?
We set in the back, guys.
I think it's just.
Everything good? Cool. All right. What do we kick it off? All right. Hey everybody, good morning. Welcome here to our today's panel discussion here on making AI a fleet reality. It's really talking here on the acquisition and fleet kind of integration for AI by 2027, and then obviously beyond. I think Alicia and Stephanie set the stage here pretty well in the chat right before this. But it's our honor to be with you here this morning to explore kind of significant strides and ongoing efforts on integrating AI into our fleet. So my name is Commander Nick Kessler. I've got the privilege of being the Chief of Staff for the Artificial Intelligence NIF. Y'all may have heard about the NIF kind of frameworks here throughout the week. So Admiral Kurt Rothenhaus, is the Chief of Naval Research, but he is also the lead for the AI NIF. Here with us today, I've also got some distinguished panelists, both here in person and online, with Ms. Steffi Tuco. So to my left is Ms. Sandy Landsberg. She's the Chief Executive there for the AI NIF, Office of the Naval Research. Left there is Gary Tingley. He's now the Service Data Officer within OpNav N2N6. And then Mr. Charles Yetman, all the way down there, is the AI Pillar Lead at Overmatch. And then online, we've got Ms. Stephanie Tuco. She's the acting Don CDAO. Over the past several months, the Navy's actually made kind of numerous strides around initiatives, forums, and activities kind of aimed at integrating some of our Navy efforts on a range of AI initiatives that are now beginning to actually get deployed to the fleet. So this has definitely been different than what we've had over the last couple of years. We've been talking about it. Now it's actually starting to hit the fleet, and you're actually getting fleet end users out there that are providing us feedback. In July 2024, the AI NIF, actually working with Don CDAO, we actually had the AI Data and Policy Workshop. So here's where we're starting to elicit some of that feedback from the fleet and those on the development side so that we can actually get some of the critical discussions on data integration and policy formulation. The Warfighting Integration NIF, I don't know if y'all have been able to be a part of any of the panels with Admiral Sweeney and a couple of the others, Admiral Kano. So that is operating there under the Warfighting Integration NIF. So that is how we're actually looking within the threefold process of OpNav, acquisition, and the fleet. How are we actually coming together in order to be able to better integrate our development and deployment process. Our recent focus has been on that governance piece then around that. How do we actually mature what we've been doing here for the last couple of years and taking it out of S&T and actually pushing it out to the fleet? So through that, though, we've already got some established governance pieces that are already out there. So the Warfighting Improvement Program, the WIP process, which is run by the fleets, that's important to be able to actually integrate some of these newer tools and initiatives to be able to get those integrated in through the governance process, especially around identifying the real core requirements around data, infrastructure, and then the workforce development that we need around that .mlpf kind of framework that y'all have heard through this week. So with that keel laid, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to introducing our panelists here so they can actually provide you some other perspectives here from across the Navy. We're going to discuss where we currently stand in our journey towards kind of integration and highlight some of the areas ripe for collaboration here with both government and industry partners. So Sandy, I'd like to actually turn to you first, ma'am, if I could. Could you please just give us a quick intro as far as your role there within the AI NIF, ma'am, and what we may be doing to work here towards the CNO's NAP plan?
Great. So thanks, Nick. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Sandy Landsberg. I am the executive supporting Admiral Rothenhouse on the AI NIF, and I'm with the Office of Naval Research. As Nick mentioned, the NIFs are about supporting the CNO and her NAV plan. The NIFs have been around for about 4 years, but we've gone through several variations. About 18 months ago, we really began to focus very much on warfighting impact. And really, we were a supporting NIF. There was the 4+4, and now there's the 5+4 in the NIFs. Just quickly to ground everyone, the 5 NIFs that are being supported: long-range fires, terminal defense, contested logistics, counter C5 ISRT, and the newest one is actually non-traditional sea denial. And then on the supported side, kind of these cross-cutting ones, is the AI NIF, Naval Operational Architecture, AKA Overmatch, robotic and autonomous systems, which previously was kind of the unmanned NIF, and then live virtual constructive. So again, our role is to kind of really support the CNO on that. So in the last 18 months, what we've really done is focused on AI for warfighting impact. And this goes to what Nick said about warfighter integration framework there. That's what we're really doing on that one. Another important part is AI for readiness, and then an AI competent workforce. But what's really important to meet this 2027 timeline is man, train, and equip. And so the AI workforce is getting after the training we need. It's not just about technology, it's making sure that that technology is usable and trusted by the sailors out there or at the mock. And again, we can do this. Technology, if it's written right and software that's written right, is very easy to use, but it really takes the reps and sets with the sailors and all to get the trust in it to know how to use it. So that's what we're focusing on, and that's really why we're engaging with the fleet. I'd say it's a shift in the last 12 months that we want to make sure they're a part of it and know what's coming in the pipeline. So specifically, some examples I can give on what we're looking at in the AI NIF. AI for warfighting impact. One, enhanced decision making. But this is at all different levels. You all know this. AI can really improve the speed and quality of decision making by processing vast quantities of information quickly. You know, we heard in the last one, this could be at the enterprise level. It could be out there almost at the regional level, at a mock, or it might need to be out there at the edge. It's not a monolithic AI solution. We really need to have solutions that can cut across all those different echelons out there, I'll say, on that front. The other thing in terms of decision making is really having AI-driven battle management aids. Overmatch has been working on this area for a couple years now and made great advancements. But how do we pull this together to support warfighting integration? How do we potentially go and marry up terminal defense with counter C5 ISR, with long-range fires? Those are some big, hard problems that the Navy is facing out there. And again, we need an ecosystem of the military, of government, of industry, all coming together to help us work in these kind of solutions. So when I talked about decision making, we're specifically supporting terminal defense in this area, contested logistics, counter C5 ISR, working very closely with the newly formed robotic and autonomous systems. as well as one of the CNO's goals, fight from the mock. That fight from the mock is really pulling all of this together. Another area that's really ripe and that the AINIF has been focusing on is in the readiness piece. On that front, you might have heard other talks on predictive maintenance, on how we can use modeling and simulation and machine learning to basically anticipate equipment failures or optimize maintenance schedules and reduce maintenance downtime. This directly supports Admiral Franchetti's Project 33 Ready Air Platforms in readiness, as well as predictive analytics on that front. The third area, and again, this is one I feel like we've really shifted in the last 6 to 12 months, is the training piece, training and simulation in support of live, virtual, and constructive training, and investing in warfighter competency. And here, we definitely can use AI in our training simulations to create more realistic scenarios and allow that warfighter out there to get trained up on it, to do those reps and sets on that front. Also, it provides an opportunity for continuous learning models to integrate lessons learned out there. There's a lot that we have learned in the Ukraine conflict, as well as in the Red Sea. We are actually doing, right now in the Navy, analyzing what happens, putting this into models and modifying the TTPs out there and feeding that back. We need to continue to make that better. There's a lot of discussion and need for AI assistance for different persona to help them get up to speed. There's just a wealth of areas. But in that third one, I really think we've worked closely in the last few months with live, virtual, and constructive on this training piece. And again, I think it's a great area. So what underpins all that? I've talked about, the decision-making, maintenance, and training. We just heard in the last talk, a lot of this is based upon the commonality. We need data at the right place, and we need to be able to understand that data out there. Working very closely with Don, CDAO, we're going to hear from Stephanie in a moment. What we really need to do is mature our data infrastructure so we have authoritative data sources. And again, we want it from point of collection, whether this is a sensor out there, a buoy bobbing on the sea, whether it's on the ship, whether it's back at the enterprise. We need to make sure that data, whatever format it is, gets to the system it needs to get at. We don't need to process everything. I think you all know that. We need to process the right information on that front. The next piece of this is we really need to mature our AI or machine learning pipeline on that operations pipeline so that we can develop, deploy, monitor, and update AI models, again, at that right operational level, effectively and efficiently. And the third area, of course, is maturing our education and training pipeline. Kind of our tagline is what the Navy needs right now is seamless AI pipeline, including data to and from what I'll call enterprise to edge, however we may define that on that front. So that's what the AI NIF has been working on. It's exciting times. I'll say especially in the last 12 months, we have a clear target of 2027, but we are looking for what capabilities do we need in the POM from 27 to 32. So happy to also talk about that. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Eddie. Appreciate it. We're going to turn to our voice in the sky here. Stephanie, if we could turn to you in your acting role as Don CDAO, kind of what is your perspective on that and how you're looking to support Navy's AI efforts?
Yeah, sure, Nick. And everyone, my apologies for not being there in person. I look forward to seeing everybody in May at IT East. But yeah, happy to dive into this. So the Dawn CDAO, as you heard a lot of what Alicia said, we are working with our partners in the Navy and the Marine Corps and across the enterprise to finalize the Dawn AI strategic intent. That's currently in work, but we expect it to be socialized soon. Without getting into too many specifics, a lot of what are in our 5 lines of effort in that stint are very much in line with what Andy just talked about in order to rapidly enable AI across the Dawn. So the 5 LOEs that are included look towards identification of mission needs and use cases, developing enterprise AI at scale. This particular LOE very much ties in with what Ms. Rathbun said on day 1 about being very smart about how we pilot and approach identifying use cases. So instead of having those 1,000 different flowers blooming, we're determining what AI use cases are the common AI use cases and which ones are the mission-specific ones. Sandy just touched on that, and Alicia also talked on it. So I won't go into too much detail there, but very much LOE2 here is about being smart about how we pilot and employ so that we are getting those common and those more niche use cases delivered to the warfighter. The stint will also focus on, as Sandy just alluded to, really driving and building the AI workforce, growing our partnerships and collaboration, making sure that we get the right people in the room and we're proactively engaging with industry and academia, and then also modernizing our governance to make sure it works for the environment that we're working in now. So Alicia touched on this earlier, but I will reiterate, Dawn CIO is also currently scoping out a vision for the Dawn Gen AI ecosystem that we very much expect to be socialized more broadly soon with senior leaders. The goal here is really to have vetted AI solutions that perform as expected, are available when they're needed, and are interoperable from enterprise to edge. Another thing that CDAO is working on right now is we are in the very early stages of developing a fleet engagement program and plan that will enable us to gain specific insight into AI and data gaps at the fleet level so that we as a collective Dawn can determine opportunities to mitigate those gaps, drive enterprise services, or pilot unique capabilities. The final thing that we're doing at CAO, I don't want to steal Gary's thunder, and I know he's getting ready to talk about it when you turn over to him, Nick, but we are working with both Navy SDO, AI NIF, and Marine Corps SDO on a AI use case inventory. But with that, I will pass it to Gary, or let Nick pass it to Gary.
That's perfect, Stephanie. That tees it up quite well. So yes, Gary, I mean, I guess over to you. So in your new role here as the Navy's SDO, kind of what are you seeing, since it's all data?
Right.
That's what we're definitely hearing in order to be able to get to AI. So we'll talk to Charles at the end here on what it's on the application side, but over to you first on the data side, if you will.
Thanks. Data. Every brief we've had for the last few days has been focused on data and data problems and data. And it's coming from my prior role, actually working on Charles on a different pillar as data PAPM for almost 3 years, working cost schedule performance to deploy data solutions to the tactical edge. I've lived those problems and seen kind of at the programmatic role the challenges to access authoritative data and backhaul that data back to shore. And also working in the denied, DDoS environment, contested environment where we don't have the capabilities that some commercial offerings would allow for. So we kind of have to bring our solution with us to the edge and work kind of offline, disconnected, quietly. So there's a big challenge in doing that. One of the things that I first looked at when I came over here was to this role was continuing to work with some of the tactical and warfighting efforts to solve specific data problems, but also at kind of the larger, for the entire fleet, larger data challenges. Focus being implementation of DoD's data strategy and Department of Navy's implementation plan, which was written a few years back. But implementation of those two documents for the service was really the focus. Next thing was to build out our own implementation plan with lines of effort and specific initiatives where we could see outcomes. So I'm starting with, we've used the term a lot this week, the term Vaultus. DoD's, I think 2020 document really kind of laid out the initial strategy to make data, not to go through the whole vocabulary there, but the first three are the ones that I've been really looking at in the last few months of making our data visible, accessible, and understandable. So the pilots and the initiatives to get after those three efforts have really been focused on data cataloging, an effort that Dawn CDAO and OpDav N2 N6 partnered on last summer to create a solution. So we've got a really good head start there. I noticed that it's really targeted on a specific registry with 300 plus systems, and that's a great start. There's a lot of other data that's out there in different locations, whether it's flank speed, et cetera, that we still need to target and get into that catalog. That helps with the visibility piece, the discoverability piece of the data that we have. Next big effort, and an effort we kicked off, just started in December, kind of getting the scope for the service, was in now what we're calling Department of Navy AI and Analytics Solutions and Use Case Inventory. And the outcome of that will also be, as Alicia talked to earlier this morning, a product catalog of use cases. It's not going to be the only way that product catalog use cases will get there, but it's going to be something we can stream into that catalog. This will be a living solution that's constantly and continuously updated from across the fleet. And we're not just doing a data call just to capture data. We're actually going to use this data to help inform the fleet. And the analogy here for folks that remember it, remember the days you'd be on an airplane, you'd pull out the Sharper image catalog from the back of the seat arrest, you flip through the pages, and you're like, oh, it's a great idea. When I get home, I'm going to try to get after either ordering that or today that Amazon, you sit in front of the screen and it just delivers. It already knows what you want, right? So you don't even need to look at the catalog. So, and maybe there's a combination of the two in a solution that we can push out to the fleet. I had another good conversation this morning on the fleet doesn't know what they don't know, and the program offices may not know where to even start with how to get after implementing generative AI into their program offices. So there may be a little reluctance there. Also, it's the funding piece. It's in many people's minds, it can be very expensive and very complicated. I think the fleet needs just a little bit of help, maybe a playbook, a guidebook on how to start. Where to start if you're at a program office and you've got some good ideas, you've got some use cases that you think AI could solve. Now, rolling back to all of this is the quality data problem that we have. We have a lot of pockets of data across the entire Navy, and that's one of the things, if I do nothing else but trying to get after discovery, visibility, get it all in a place where we can kind of see what we have in totality and how we can use that data for generative AI, for agentic AI, and some of the other projects that we're looking at for use cases in the future. That's one of the things I'm really focused on right now.
Cool. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. So, Charles, both Sandy and Gary both kind of alluded to everything you've been doing over there at Overmatch. You've been kind of at the forefront of getting some of these tools actually deployed out there to the fleet. Can you kind of offer your perspective on how that has been going and where else we may be, kind of looking to leverage Overmatch and other mechanisms in order to deploy these tools out to the fleet?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nick. So hopefully my voice holds up through this. So I appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel. I see a lot of friends and colleagues in the audience, so hello, everybody. So Overmatch, I think it's been laser focused on this concept of a digital ecosystem. Like how do we rapidly deliver capability to warfighters? I think the initial focus was very software heavy from like a DevSecOps perspective, and we could maybe have the argument about whether ML and AI is software or not, but I think there are some intricacies that require bespoke tooling to set up an MLOps pipeline, as Sandy mentioned. So what we did is we got after this. We worked with Defense Innovation Unit. We put out a commercial solutions opening. We said, hey industry, what tools do you have from an MLOps perspective? Can we leverage in the Navy? We down selected, awarded to 5 companies and deployed that on a prototype OT. In terms of like working with the fleet, having tools and infrastructure is great, but if no one's using them, it's not really that helpful. So we partner with PMS 408 in the Mark 18 medium UUV program. So they have the ability to detect objects under the surface of the water, and they use ATR machine learning models for that. The issue with them is that the cycle time to turn around updates to that model was on the order of 12 to 18 months. And if they deploy to a new environment that has a different bottom type or there's a new object they want to find, the model's not going to work. So I think it was a perfect marriage working with them to integrate their workflows into the environment and to leverage the MLOps tooling. And back in 2023 in the fall, we did an exercise where they were actually able to reduce the cycle time to collecting data, retraining a new model, pushing it back out, and actually finding a new target of interest in about 6 days. So that was it says here 97% decrease, so you trust me on the math. The other piece is establishing edge processing to like exfil that locally collected data. So that's another, long tent in the pole. Like we collect data all day long. We store it on some, NAS drive, and then every, when the UMS platoon rolls out, they, fly back with the hard drive, and then it goes to some closet at NIWC pack, and like eventually we, process the data. with Starlink and other technologies, like the ability to move that data is, pretty straightforward. So I think that's been a interesting piece as well. And, the intent would be to, expand to other robotic autonomous systems initiatives that maybe you've heard about in other panels this week. And right now we're in the process of letting production contracts for the 5 ammo vendors, thankfully through a grant from the OSD AppFit program to kind of bridge us till we can get to POM 26. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Charles. Appreciate it. Appreciate the panelists kind of giving us kind of opening remarks on that. So again, to turn to a couple questions here in order to kind of dive into some of the aspects that they kind of illuminated there for us. So Sandy, kind of first to you. With Admiral Franchetti's nav plan, right? So she labeled it that we're looking to leverage AI in order to outthink, right, our potential adversaries out there. So how do you think we're leveraging the AI ecosystem right now, whether through the AI NIF or others, right, in order to be able to actually operationalize what she's articulating there in the nav plan?
Sure. So, the key word Nick just mentioned is it's an ecosystem. I think as you just heard, I represent the AI NIF and we report to CNO. And then Stephanie talked about Don CDAO. We have N2N6, we have Overmatch. There's industry out here. What I want to do is really say we all have to come together. I talked about the commonalities that we have across all of us and the gaps. That's what we want to do with these kind of, collecting. What are the use cases? What are the gaps? How can we share that across Navy and across the Don out there? So what are some of the important components of this Navy ecosystem and naval ecosystem out there? One of the things we haven't really touched upon is the AI NIF, when it first stood up, really was behind establishing 6 AI task forces. They knew that if we want to accelerate AI to the fleet, we needed to have a fleet component, and it was through the TICOMs on that front. There were 6 of them: Task Force Hopper at Surf 4, Task Force Turing at Sub 4, Task Force Ellison, Air 4 and Nav Air, Task Force Titan EOD, Task Force Proteus at NSW, and then Task Force Station Hyper at Nav I4. They are still critical components in this ecosystem out there that we have. And next component of this, how do we reach out to the different audiences? I want to talk about the different forums. For a while, everybody had their own forum. We've actually, in the last few months, are working together across all the forums on this one. As a matter of fact, Don IT is one of the forums that we talk about data and AI. Really great opportunity for industry to come in and hear what we're doing. Early on, the AI NIF stood up some AI summits. This was done at Naval Postgraduate School, getting those students out there interested in AI. The AI task forces went to the AI summits hosted by MPS. It's a quarterly meeting. It's been at MPS. It's been at Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. It's been at U.S. Naval Academy. This is run by Randy Pugh. The advantage of the AI Summit, it's a slightly different audience. We're really getting the military officers to come in and talk about their challenges, talk about the problems they're solving on that front. But it also has other service representation. We have industry come in on that one. It's open to government and contractors. There's an unclassified session and a classified session to that. The other one that we have is actually a data and AI workshop. This is hosted by Nywick Lant. A lot of this is kind of getting after some specific problems. It's more of a government-only session. Again, it can be classified or unclassified. And I don't want to forget that, the next one coming up is in Naval Applications in Machine Learning. That is Kate Rainey, and it's hosted by AFCEA. It's here in San Diego about 1 month from now, last week in February. Great meeting where we have a lot, again, of open research. AI has a lot of research still out there. Oh, he's putting up, Charles, what do you?
Yeah, I gotta.
Advertise, man.
I can't figure it out.
Okay, NAML.
See me after the meeting.
Yeah.
Excellent. I got to put it out there. But come on, we all know part of AI, there's a strong S&T component to it. So again, what we are really trying to do in each one of these forums too is actually have a different theme. So at one of them, we might really focus on AI for wargaming. That's a piece of it. How about AI and how it can support fight from the mock? So by us collaborating together on the forums piece, we can let attendees know, hey, this is the focus of the meeting and this is what we think you should attend. Otherwise, people just go to meeting not knowing that. And we're trying to help promote that and get it out there to everyone. One of the things we talked a little bit about, I mentioned that readiness piece, the AI NIF. The last couple years, we've been working with the Chief Digital Transformation Officer on that, and NAVC to actually do a shipyard AI use case. In the last quarter, I'll say from September to December, we delivered an AI proof of concept to demonstrate the benefits of a large language model for task group instructions at the shipyards. You know, the question is, hey, what's the data? Well, it was a RAG model. We actually got data from Norfolk Naval Shipyard. That's not that hard. You know what the hard part of this was? It was actually doing a NAVC cloud hosting environment. The actual LLM was relatively easy, straightforward, but we got the approvals to do it in their environment so they can use it. That's the kind of proof of concept we want to do. NAVC is now very interested in expanding this, and they have a lot of other efforts. We talked about the benefits of proof of concept. You can do something small for a little bit of money, but if you do it in a Navy system environment, that's really, truly helpful to us because we can see that it works in there, it gets through all the ATOs, RMF, all that kind of thing. Incredibly valuable. Once you do that, Navy leadership will say, absolutely run forward on it. So I love the idea of pilots and proof of concepts. You heard too, we have been working closely with Don CIO and Don CDAO, Alicia, Stephanie, everyone here. You guys are really leading us in policy. We're really looking to you for that. And you've also done a phenomenal job and same thing here, on the data, discoverability, access, you name it. The AI NIF should be really called the data NIF, but guys, that's not sexy enough. AI is in, just saying. But we can't get there without you, and we know that. So again, we have this great collaboration across the board, and I want to thank you on that. And we need that data to go, train our models and be able to deploy. I'd say all of us are working very closely with big DoD CDAO. You confused us. We have a Don CDAO and a DoD CDAO. We look to them for data infrastructure and educational priorities, helping with resourcing. And again, they're working very closely with Defense Innovation Unit, DIU, to help us partner up with industry, use other transaction authorities that we have to really bring industry in on these problems. So again, I see the AI NIF really being a coordinator for the Navy to actually accelerate AI to the fleet. And again, I'm going to look at Don CDAO. They're going to work the enterprise solution. We're going to come together and help deliver AI capabilities for the Navy out there. So that kind of covers the Navy ecosystem. Hopefully you figured out where to plug in. If you have any questions, come ask me after this.
Awesome. Thanks, Sandy. So Charles, Sandy, I think, teed this up well over to you. So talking through how DIU, OSD, CDAO have been working together really through and with you on the Navy side of the house. OSD, CDAO currently, well, they recently kind of announced their Open Dagger construct. Can you kind of let us know how you guys at NavWar maybe look to actually leverage that in partnership with DIU so we can get some stuff out to the fleet?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nick. So I mean, basically, so I guess when you work for an admiral, sometimes you get new jobs frequently, and they don't take away your existing job. So one of those new jobs, we're sort of spearheading this pilot. Like, how do we get after operationalizing AI, and can we maybe look at it from a slightly different lens? We're working in partnership between Overmatch, CDAO, and DIU. So how do we leverage enterprise investments, infrastructure, tooling, and contracts? So Open Dagger. And I think you spelled out the acronym. Thank you for that, because I don't have that memorized. But it's a multi-vendor ecosystem that enables industry and government to integrate data platforms, development tools, services, and applications. And I think the key point here is in a way that preserves government data ownership and industry intellectual property. So I know a lot, folks. If you've ever done contracts, lots of wrestling with data rights and how do I preserve the IP of commercial companies, but yet be able to leverage their products. So combining enterprise level contracts, so they have other transaction authorities that are let to basically deploy capability to a GOCO government-owned contractor operated environment. So the plan is to take advantage of existing investments and infrastructure and funding that's been allocated and get after some specific use cases to say, can we use this model to basically single up on a data layer, surface some data that is being collected through a host of other systems, a lot of collaboration with the Jupyter Advana team, and other systems of record across the Navy. And then the second piece is how do we work with DIU to, again, leveraging their other transaction authority, like 90-day flash to bang from, 2-pager of requirements to getting a prototype OT on contract, and really test this open dagger hypothesis. Can we actually bring in third-party companies that will deploy to this environment right on top of it? And then, I think typically when you try to do anything with data or AI, you let a contract, and the first thing they ask is like, okay, well, how do I get access to the data? Like, where is it? What's the data model? How do I collect it? So I think the intent here is to have some of that data work lying flat, and then bring in companies so that they can immediately get after, building AI-enabled workflows. I think in terms of I think the last part of the question was, how do we link these efforts up with established acquisition processes? So I think we're getting pretty good at leveraging other, prototype other transaction, but I think we could, improve in terms of how do we then move to a follow-on production contract, whether that's OT or FAR-based. And then, the issue in terms of like, how do we lay the funding in to sustain these capabilities? Like the time scale to do this is just, doesn't really jive with like the traditional PPP process, right? If I'm able to let a prototype OT in 90 days, iterate through that, get a success memo in 6 to 9 months, and then I want to turn around and do a production contract, there's most certainly not funding like POM for that. So I think that's something we need to, figure out. And I think, Admiral Sweeney touched on that on one of his panels yesterday. So.
Thanks, Charles.
Yep.
So I think that lends itself then here to go over to Stephanie. I know, Alicia, you definitely teed this up quite well here in your session even before this. Going back over to if it really is about the data, I agree, Charles. Like, we've been leveraging the models here for a while. We kind of know what we've got. We're starting to actually deploy and trust this. But we've also need to be able to get the data pipelines set up and right in order to be able to actually fuse that and get it out there. So Stephanie, over to you. I mean, again, Alicia kind of alluded to some of this, but from your perspective there within CDAO, how are you looking to leverage whether established or maybe new governance structures in order to be able to actually help us get the data to where it needs to be in order to be able to support these AI initiatives?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of governance structures, sorry, had a little bit of an echo there. So if you were in our Data North Star session yesterday, you likely heard me talk about how we've reshaped our governance construct to shift from really a more centralized governance model to a federated governance model, empowering action at the lowest level that makes sense, but also giving anyone from anywhere across the dawn really an elevation path for data and AI gaps or issues that they seem that may need a higher level of adjudication than what they can access at their current level. So as this governance, this more centralized, this more federated governance model is very much an expansion from what we had previously. So originally we did have just data in the scope of our Dawn Data Governance Board, but when AI became part of CDAO's scope, we expanded that governance framework to include analytics and AI, which really, I feel, empowers us to really govern across the whole collect, prepare, use relationship between data and analytics. It gives us the ability to really meaningfully action data and analytics feedback, like the feedback loop between the two of them, so that we can rapidly address issues, enhance integration, and address problems and expand our approach. So really, as we go into this year, one of our big focuses is going to be on establishing data quality standards and measures that are based on the DoD data quality dimensions. so that we can ensure, like Gary said, we have greater visibility and discoverability that will help us mature that trusted and understandable piece of Voltus in this coming year. So the expectation right now is to stand up some sort of enduring advisory group to establish these guide rails, or some sort of time-bound, very limited, very specific focus CFT to accelerate this work, part of our governance construct, so that we can really baseline our current data quality and understand what is ready for AI, what needs to be further prepped to support AI initiatives. We know from our ongoing data quality audit that there are a lot of great data quality programs already in place across the Don. So we want to be able to take those findings and determine what makes sense, what can be lifted and shifted across the enterprise to get us more mature there than we are right now. Another big push for Ms. Rathman this year was definitely going to be towards labeling and data labeling and data tagging. So that is something I would expect to see from CDAO in the coming year as well. Very early days on that, but we are beginning industry engagements and engagement with partners to discuss capabilities and options there.
Cool. Thanks, Stephanie. One of the things that you and I think Alicia mentioned there, as far as y'all's kind of fleet engagement side too on this, right? So that's definitely something that AI NIF and Don CDAO are kind of partner up on. We've actually got a couple of the reps here from the fleet in the room. Definitely encourage y'all to try to latch up with them if y'all are interested in kind of seeing what it's looking like, where it's actually hitting the bleeding edge there with the fleet. So Gary, like over to you on that piece. I know that you've just been in the seat here for a couple months. How are you, looking at leveraging kind of your cohorts out there at the fleet edge side? Are they the fleet like data officers and that sort of stuff in order to try to look at the transport issues they may be having? How are we actually looking at where the data is actually landing so we actually leverage it? What does it look like at the tactile edge and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, thanks. So I was just talking to Becky a little earlier on this from PEO C4I, and I've been talking with the TD team from C4I for the last couple of months about the challenges identified this past year in data backhaul for some of the training data that's required for some of these models. Some of the vendors, they kind of default towards the easy commercial solution, but again, in our disconnected tactical edge environment, we may not have all the luxuries of commercial solutions. What we've got to operate quietly, and we've got to operate securely. We don't want the adversaries to kind of know where we're working. So we have these different challenges in the fleet that we have to account for as we look at capturing data, backhauling it, getting it to folks that the teams that need it, and then getting it back out to the edge to make an impact. So a lot of the work there on data backhaul, identifying kind of the modernization for the infrastructure at the edge, working with the PEO C4I team to kind of be the connector integrator between the AI NIF and the C4I team to make sure that we're accounting for future requirements and we can kind of meet the demand and need for AI at the edge. Speaking of AI at the edge, a couple of the projects in the past that we started to dive into a little, and some of the interest areas that I think we're gonna get after, if you're talking about use cases specifically. I think we'll see more of these, but I know there's already been some work and some looks out in the fleet. One of them, we talked this morning. Alicia talked about generative AI. Some of those use cases, they're going to help the sailors make decisions faster. These chatbots will allow them to get assistance with, and I mentioned it this morning, shipboard maintenance. So if you train a model on thousands of PDF documents, you're going to be able to help that sailor kind of look up information a lot faster at the edge. There's already been a lot of work in this area and helping to productionize those solutions, get them out to the edge, but also to get the training data required into a place where the models can be developed is one of the areas I'm hoping to connect and help get that across the finish line. Another area is in app development, coding assistance. We've already seen some great progress in sailors with an aptitude and interest to be able to code and build decision advantage, visualization products at the edge. Some of these generative AI solutions can help to go a little faster with Python coding assistance, some scripting assistance. Some of the generative AI solutions may just kind of close the knowledge gap for these sailors and help a sailor to be able to build edge products a little faster. Really tailored to the commander's tasking for whatever area in the world we're working in. Another big area where I don't know we've done a ton of work, but I could see a lot of value in this, and it's going to be an interesting journey as we kind of define out the use cases, is in agentic AI. Robots at the edge in a disconnected environment are going to be something that I think our future fleets are going to be able to utilize, and it'll really be a force multiplier of the sailors on ships and at the Maritime Operations Center. So some of that work could be, decision making on their own, enabling these bots to kind of solve tasks and make decisions and kind of process work alongside the sailors, so that sailor doesn't have to do all of the work by themselves. They can have a kind of a team of agents. These agents could even task other agents. You could have a little workforce of task completers, if you will, at the tactical edge working on problems, and you could have a sailor kind of overseeing this little workforce of these agents solving problems with minimum human input. So all of this takes quality data. One of the challenges we've talked about all week is access, visibility, understandability of that data, trusted data, secure data, API marketplaces, being able to connect, ingest what you need when you need it. Maybe you don't want to store all this data at the edge. Maybe you do. Again, it's going to be very dependent on some of the requirements and some of the capabilities that we're yet to even think about. So lastly, I'll say that ultimately all these solutions are going to require access to the high quality data, and that's really where in my role I'm trying to close gaps and rapidly work through the use cases to get really our prioritization in place, where we can develop quick initiatives for wins and build upon those wins and get capabilities out to improve the outcomes for the warfighter.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Gary. So I've got one last question here before we wrap things up, kind of to all the panelists. I think it's definitely evident from those that are actually here live. Stephanie, I know you've been here before, ma'am, so I know that you definitely understand how big that hall is downstairs, but all the effort here from our industry partners being pushed around data enablement, some of the AI tools that are actually out there, it's great to see. So for our panelists, what I'd like to be able to ask you guys is, since commercial investment in the area of AI is significant, Charles, is first go over to you, sir, if you don't mind. What kind of dual use opportunities are you seeing that we can actually leverage here in the AI realm?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So I think, excuse me, from a ML ops perspective, right? I think there's that's something industry's been working for many years. So being able to bring in those dual use technologies is an example of something we've done successfully. I think obviously deploying frontier models, whether those are generative AI or LLMs, taking those models and deploying them to government infrastructure, right? So that they're not out there running in the commercial side of things. And then the last thing I'll talk about is just from the and Sandy touched on this, data storage and data collection. So how do we augment our units with the right storage and compute to actually process data at the edge? If you look at a typical Navy ship is generating a lot of data, and there's unless there's some new transport breakthrough that I don't know about, we're not going to be able to stream that all back in near real time. It's just not physics is a reality. So how do we actually filter that data and push some of that processing forward so that we only send the data back that we really care about and we really need to?
Cool. Thanks, Charles. Gary, same question kind of over to you. What sort of opportunities are you seeing?
Well, I downstairs yesterday, I had some great conversations. I see some folks in the crowd. The data backhaul piece, as Charles was saying, some creative means of partnering with industry. There's a lot of bright ideas and some great solutions out there to solve some of our problems at the edge that are kind of, I'd say unique to Navy. that we've got with challenges of AI and being able to train AI and not only back all the data, but also deliver out to uncrewed platforms. So a lot of challenges in the space. Looking forward to kind of partnering with industry to help us to kind of close the gap on some of these use cases.
Okay, thanks, Harry. Same question, Stephanie, over to you online, ma'am.
Hey, yes, absolutely. So I actually am going to tag in my incomparable tech director, Alicia Scott, to jump in and answer this one.
Hello. So, thanks, Stephanie. So for dual use, kind of how I mentioned earlier, we can't do this without industry. We need industry to do some of this development that we don't have the ability or time or effort to do in-house. So being able to partner specifically with the fleet use cases that are even more complicated than, say, me sitting at my desk, wherever that might be, use cases. So those fleet opportunities have such specific needs and requirements, and I think industry is specifically tailored to be able to solve those. So, I mean, we have the methodologies like the Horizon charts, like vendor meetings, like all the things that I mentioned before, but working alongside our partners up here, specifically the AI NIF, and the work that they have been doing is phenomenal. And Charles and his work, and Gary and the team that are leading out initiatives to help really target those fleet use cases so that you as vendors know, here's how I need to tailor my solution to make sure it actually impacts fleet needs, and here's from the governance guidance side, how I can actually apply that and get it out to the fleet so that it doesn't, I developed it for nothing, or I developed it and it didn't actually meet the requirements. So merging those two together. Thanks, Stephanie.
Cool. Thanks, Alicia. So, Sandy, lastly, over to you. Same question, please.
Sure. I mentioned a couple of these, really where I see dual use, especially automated image and scene understanding. Obviously, the Uber, Tesla, they do an absolutely phenomenal job. My comment always is the maritime environment is a lot more complicated out there. So again, we could definitely use a lot more help in that kind of automated image and content recognition. Another big thing, we talked about here, data fusion, creating a common operating picture where you might have organic sensors, inorganic sensors, different fidelity of the data and all that kind of thing. Industry has done a lot of work in that area, but there's still a lot of challenges, especially as it applies to Navy. Going on to that readiness piece, Amazon has smart warehouses. I think we ought to have smart shipyards out there where everything's labeled. We know where parts are. We could ship them on time and work together on that. So improved asset management, improved scheduling, and improved logistics on that front. I will say Amazon fails right before Christmas. All their dates get messed up, a snowstorm out there. But guess what? The Navy faces that every single day with storms, typhoons, and whatnot on that front. But again, we can definitely leverage what they have done, and we are doing that. And the fourth one we really talked about is kind of generative AI. How can we bring this in to help the warfighter, to help readiness, to help with admin, to help with training? I think the one thing we haven't talked about that's really important to me is testing, evaluation, verification, and validation. That's critically important. I love, someone had an expression previously, when you use AI or when you use technology, for the dull, the dirty, and the deadly. And that verification, evaluation, testing, evaluation, that's really going to depend on, okay, is this an admin task? Well, yeah, how much do I need to do? Versus the dirty, well, I might need a little bit more. Versus the deadly, where again, we probably want a human in that decision-making loop out there. So again, what I want to highlight is that there's a lot of opportunities on that, a lot of dual use, but when you come to the Navy, please make sure you understand the environment you're operating in, and is it one of those categories of dull, dirty, or deadly?
Thanks, Sandy. So appreciate the panelists' kind of perspectives on this. One thing, definitely hearing from you guys, and one thing I want to bring back to the forefront here is kind of what's in the title, right? Is really trying to make it a fleet reality. So as we're starting to push some of the applied AI tools actually out there and getting feedback, I think Admiral Franchetti used that term outthink very specifically, right? That means that it's the sailor, the Marine out there actually leveraging the tool to outthink, right? And make decisions at the tactical edge. It's everything though here that's being done with both what the panelists are kind of driving at here and their separate orgs, Alicia, what you and Stephanie are obviously doing, and the rest of our partners here. There is going to be sort of the prioritization piece that we actually have to add on here because of our timeline that we're dealing with. So I said 2027 and beyond here for the panel because it's not like it's just a stopgap. January 1st doesn't come and we just stop the AI efforts, right? Everything is going to be on kind of a production cycle, and we're going to start really getting that second, third iteration on that feedback. And that's honestly where we really actually need partnership here with industry in order to be able to figure out how do we actually start to leverage some of those tools that we're initially deploying. We're going to start getting the feedback from the sailors and Marines on that. Obviously, we've got kind of established processes through the governance and the organizations pieces, but it's really going to be what y'all are going to be looking at the tactical edge and out there within industry to bring us some of those tools that we can actually leverage in here. So definitely, I think that's kind of the challenge here is we're kind of maturing this thought process and taking AI from being a buzzword out there to actually being real, I think is important here. So let me go ahead and end on that. Really, thank you very much here to the panelists. Really appreciate it, and thank you all for participation here today. Thank you.
And we'll be here for questions.
Questions?
Huh? No questions? Y'all can come on up and ask us any questions y'all want.